Hi, everyone. I just wanted to jump in and respond to some of your comments about the tale of the porter and the young girls. I'm really enjoying reading them. I wanted to start off with one of the questions that some of you are addressing about the kind of the description of the beauty, the metaphors used to describe the young girl's beauty. And Jacob, I think, mentions talking about the metaphor about the young maiden's eyebrows being a resemblance of the crescent moons of Ramadan. And I think you or somebody else mentions that wasn't exactly clear of what Ramadan is, or it's a little confusing. And so Ramadan is the month where Muslims fast. It happens once a year, and it changes month. Um, it happens at different times of the year. But the importance of the moon, and I think Elliot answers that question nicely. Part of the moon is that it tells those who are practicing when they can break the fast. So during the month of Ramadan, people who observe it will not eat anything from dusk to dawn, but anything in between you can, or dawn to dusk, I'm sorry. And so, yes, dusk, like Elliot says, indicates that you can now see the moon. So it's a way that that you can eat when the moon is there. Now, when there is the crescent moon, a lot of times there's controversy or question like, does Ramadan begin on this day, or is it the next day or the day before? And how that works is according to the moon. So when you see the crescent moon, or when it appears, then you know it's Ramadan time. And then when you see the crescent moon appear again towards the end of the month, then you know it's the end of Ramadan, and then people break fast, and then there is a celebration and feast. So that's one of the images. And then another one of the images is describing her mouth as the scarlet of Suleiman. And you looked up the word, and it's man of peace. It does mean that. It could also be a reference to Suleiman is the Arabic word. I think it's also he was considered to be a gifted person who was able in Islam, who was able to speak to birds and other animals. Suleiman himself is known for being a prophet and king of Israel, and Islam views him as being, kind of chosen by God because of his abilities to talk to birds and other animals. One of the things to think about too is in terms of how the girls or the older sister is described. And that's, the crescent moon being white. And then there's also reference later on to her belly is also being white. Um, and uh, and so those references. Now, the moon, I will say, is quite a common image to be used to describe beauty in poetry, in Arabic literature and poetry, especially women's beauty, because like the full moon is just very beautiful and bright, right? So there is definitely that, but it's also interesting to think about, the is she being described in terms of her sensuality and beauty as being white. It could be, a product of the translation, or it could be also a product of colonization and being, the standards of beauty. That are that are existing or that are being kind of imposed. So it's really not totally clear which one that is. Now the other thing is definitely she does have quite a big list that she gets, and I think it does set up in some ways the tone, and also when we realize that those girls live on their own. And they're called girls. I think, Allison, you asked me why are they described as young girls. Again, it could be the translation, but I think it's also because they're presumed to be virgins, and they tell the porter that if they that they are virgins, and kind of set that limit that they're not going. It's not going to go probably beyond, the flirtation and everything else, even though we have a lot of erotic tension going on. And part of it is to think about that in terms of the frame narrative, where Shahrazad's trying to sort of lay out the idea to the Sultan that women can be beautiful, they can be virgins, and they can live on their own. Now, the fact that they are living on their own is breaking a big taboo, right? But it is an imaginary kind of, tale. But so trying to get that across to the Sultan, kind of underline, in an underlying way that, um, you have here three women who do live on their own, and they are virgins, and they are beautiful, and they are sexual. So not all women are going to be exploiting their sexuality and beauty. Could be, read within the frame narrative as that kind of lesson that she's trying to convey to him. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the porter does sort of insert himself into their world. When he comes in, he's just kind of taken by the beauty and that they have, and just wants to be part of that world. And he tells them, you're three women, you can't possibly be happy by yourself, and so you do need a fourth, and I want to be that fourth, right? And then they have those boundaries, and the way that he sort of releases the erotic tension between them is through poetry. After he drinks wine, he recites those poems, and that's actually kind of, it's part of literature, but it's also part of a culture and tradition, where people or men will start reciting poetry to women to praise their beauty and to kind of like release a lot of that erotic tension within cultural systems. And I think it comes from the tales and from classical Arabic literature, right, where men will start blurting out poetry. Just to say, so yes, the porter is, I think, definitely, I agree that the porter is not there for love interest, and the older sister agrees to, pay for him because the other sisters didn't necessarily want to have him there, right? So definitely not a love interest. And that could partly be also, you could take into consideration social class. So they are of a, he is a porter, and they do seem to be pretty well off and wealthy. That's, one of the underlying kind of sub narratives, subplots in there. And the older sister saying, well, I'll take up the fees and pay for him. So there's that kind of social class, right? And he's already breaking those kind of social class boundaries by being part of their world and them accepting him.